it's me again. My name is Wangfo and I'm 9 years old. Today we are gonna talk about a book called Who book, and it's a book that helps you learn about some people that is really rich, famous, and yeah. So this is what you're gonna learn today. So I'm gonna read about the book Albert Einstein because he's famous. But I don't really know what he does. So today we are gonna read about him and see about his adventures. So let's read this book. That's really cool. We're gonna know. Wow. There's about 100 pages. About 100 pages. Now let's read about this book. Let's do this. Who was Albert Einstein? For an idea that is not just possible insane, there is no hope. Albert Einstein. Did you know that Albert Einstein was a very poor student who got kicked out of school while he was? Yet he was one of the most brilliant people that the world has ever known. Do you know that Albert was a peace-loving person who hated war? Well, he was. That is what led to the creation of the most destructive bomb ever. Do you know that Albert was shy and hated publicity and attention? Yet he was a media superstar. Even now, 50 years after his death, Hollywood still make movies about him, and T-shirts, coffee mugs, and posters are decorated with pictures of his famous face. Who was Albert Einstein? You're about to find out. Chapter 1. Born to Think. There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle. Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein made his entrance in the world on March 14, 1879, in Germany. He certainly didn't seem like an ordinary child. He was chubby and pale with thick black hair. He was so quiet and shy that his parents worried that there was something wrong with him. They took Albert to the doctors. He doesn't talk, his parents explained. The doctors found nothing wrong. The story goes that Albert didn't speak a word until he was 3 or 4 years old. They suddenly, super, one night, the soup is hot. Christy relieved. His parents asked why he had never said anything before. Because the Albert replied, up to now, everything is implied. Is this story true? There's no proof. Most boys his age play soldier and other rough and tumble games, not Albert. When Albert saw real soldiers matching with the blank faces, they frightened him. Albert preferred to stay by himself and daydream. He enjoyed playing with blocks and building houses after playing cards. Some of them were 14 stories high. His parents continued to worry about the lonely and quiet son. They took him to more doctors. Could there be something wrong with his brain? His parents asked. Once again, doctors found nothing. The magnetic earth. Magnets have invisible forces. Every magnet has two ends, one called the North Pole and one called the South Pole. The North Pole of any magnet is attracted to the South Pole of any other magnet. Bring opposite poles close to each other and they stay together, but try to bring two poles together, north and north or south and south. You can't. The iron inside the earth creates magnetic force. The Earth itself has a North Pole and near the North Pole, and a South Pole and near the South Pole. A compass needle is magnetic. One end is attracted to the Earth's North Pole and one to the Earth's South Pole. There's an arrow on the end of the compass needle that always points north. Albert also enjoyed playing the violin. Music calms his active mind. He especially liked playing dance with his mother. He would accompany him on the piano. One day while they were playing, Albert suddenly realized that music charts were like patterns of numbers. Musical drums were like counting by 3, 4, 8. Music just like numbers, he explained to his mind. Albert was thinking even when he blessing. Later, when Albert was famous and traveled all around the world, he carried only two things with him, a suitcase and a violin. When Albert was a year old, his family moved to the city of Munich in Germany. Their sister Marche was born. Albert expected the little sister to be like a toy, but Marche had no wheels like his other toy. Where is wheel? He asked his parents, Kelly Potter with the wheelless little girl. Hannah quickly became Albert's best friend. They grew older. Albert and Marche loved to take long walks and hikes. Often, their cousins came with them. The harder the year, the better Albert could think. On these thinking hikes, he used his compass and thought more about how mysterious the world was. He would lie on his back in the grass, look at the sky and think about space. Is there anything farther away than space? How fast would somebody have to go to get there? How does light get all the way from those stars to your eyes? How far does space go on? Could you ride on a beam of light? Is there anything bigger than the universe? It was as if Albert had been born to think. His father and uncles have got his thinking. His sisters and cousins encouraged his thinking hikes. Albert found books to help him think about math and science problems. His mother introduced him to music, which engaged his mind in a way that books could not. Just as some kids dream of becoming mechanics or veterinarians, Albert was decided to be a thinker. Chapter 2. What's to be done with a genius? Wait a minute. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 6. 1, 2, 3. It's 9. But don't worry, we already have 2. Albert's liked elementary school. The teachers were kind and patient. They tried their best to answer all of Albert's questions. But things changed when Albert turned 10. That's when he started high school. It was an awful experience. Once when Albert's father asked the school principal what profession his son was considered, the principal said it doesn't matter. Albert will never make a success of himself at anything. German high school was very strict. The students had to wear uniforms that to match the shoulders from one class to the next, and shoulders made Albert nervous. In the classroom, everyone had to sit very straight at all times. Teachers yelled at orders, so the jumped to attention. Questions were not allowed. Albert was expected to read and memorize. He was not expected to think. Albert was stunned. This wasn't his style. Albert called the teachers, surgeons, because as a treatise did. Math was his favorite subject because you couldn't just memorize math problems. He had to think them though. At home, his uncle made up difficult algebra problems for Albert. Algebra is math that involves equations, and for Albert, it was like solving a puzzle. Albert was also given a book that he used to teach himself geometry. Geometry is math that involves shapes, squares, cubes, circles, and spheres. And for Albert, it was like playing with blocks. Meanwhile, other boys in his class were still struggling with multiplying and dividing, and Albert was being punished for asking too many questions. Albert never really fit in with the other boys' school. He wasn't interested in sports, and the classes were boring. Albert needed an older brother, someone who had lived through a rough high school experience, to let him know that everything would turn out okay. For Albert, that older brother, Max Chongi. Max was a medical student and a friend of the family. He often joined the instincts for dinner. Max quickly came to understand and appreciate how brilliant the teenage Albert was. He brought Albert lots of books from the local university. Max couldn't really discuss math with Albert. The flight of Albert's mathematical Genius wrote math that was so hard that I could no longer follow. Math did encourage Albert to explore new interests. So when Albert was reading about history and studying religion, Albert's family was Jewish, but his parents did not follow many Jewish customs. They sent Albert to a Roman Catholic elementary school simply because they thought it was the best school available. But for a while, Albert wanted to follow the traditions of the Jewish religion very strictly. For example, he refused to eat pork. Like many people, Albert did not believe the exact words of the Bible, such as passages that the world had been created in just 6 days. Did this end Albert's interest in religion? No, it just gave Albert's curiosity mind even more to think about. Ideas come from God, he claimed. And later in his life, Albert often said that his goal as a scientist was to read God's mind. When Albert was 15, his friend Max moved to America. Losing Max was very hard on Albert. Then Albert's family moved from Germany to Italy because of his father's business, leaving Albert behind to finish schools. Albert was angry and lonely and hated school more than ever. Albert had never looked up to his teachers. Now he grew openly disrespectful of them. As Italy, as Germany, oh. Unthinking respect for authority, explained, is the greatest enemy of the truth. One of his teachers called him lazy dog. Others said that he was a bad influence on his classmates because he was always asking questions that teachers could not answer. The end result was that Albert was expelled from school. Chapter 3. Albert takes a very deep breath and keeps thinking. One is born into a herd of buffaloes and must be glad if one is not trampled underfoot because one's Albert is what meant. So, it's just my grandpa and grandma. Let's do. Getting expelled from school, even school he hated, was very painful for Albert. He was embarrassed to fail so openly. He was angry with his teachers. He was disappointed in himself. Yet he was also excited that he would soon see his family. Albert joined his parents and sister in northern Italy. Italy was so different from Germany. Albert quickly fell in love with the country. Italians were so friendly, civilized, and open-minded. For the next 2 years, Albert went to concerts and visited art museums. Best of all, he had time to read and to think. He studied the lives of giants, including those who had suffered because their thinking had gone against what he had ideas at the time. For example, there was Nicholas Copernicus, whom 1470 to 1545. The Polish astronomer, he was thoroughly criticized by stating that the Earth orbited around the Sun and not vice versa. 100 years later, in 1633, Galileo Galilei, an Italian scientist, was arrested for agreeing with Copernicus. In Augusta, no sane person believes that the Sun circles the Earth. The study of other scientists' theories pushed Auburn's thinking even further. In Italy, he had the time to write down those thoughts and answer many of the questions he had been asking himself for years. Now he was a real scientist. Even at his first scientific paper published in a magazine while he was still a teenager. When scientists have new ideas to share, they write about them in scientific journals. That's what it means to get a paper published. For others, as for all scientists. Getting papers published was very important. It was the only way our scientists could learn about his ideas and thoughts. Albert's first published paper was about electricity and magnetism. There was no surprise at all. And after all, he has been thinking about both subjects for years. But to everybody's surprise, Albert began his paper by disagreeing with something that all scientists assumed was true. Scientists claimed that the empty parts of our space, the parts with the planet's moons, was filled with something called ether. Scientists had no idea what ether was made of, or what it looked like, felt like, or smelled like, but they all agreed it was there. Albert disagreed. He claimed that the empty parts of space was well empty. Albert's first paper did not get a lot of attention. Although Albert was disappointed by that, he should have not been surprised. After all, Albert was a teenager who had been expelled from high school and who was still living with his parents, to challenge the theories of the world's most respected scientists. However, years later, many of those same scientists would seek at his first published paper and marvel at the genius of young scientists. Because Albert was right. While living in Italy, Albert took long walks by himself. Day after day, he hiked in the mountains. His family business was failing. Albert worried that he was a rain on his parents, a sponge that took but never gave back. He had lots to think about, and a daily walk in time alone cleared his mind. I lived in solitude in the country and noticed how the monotony of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind. He said, Albert made several important decisions during those hikes. He decided to study physics at college. Physics is the science of objects, their energy, and the way they move. After they wanted to become a physics professor, to do that, Albert knew that he would have to finish high school, but no school could ever own his mind, which his German high school had tried to do. So let's see. All the way to 30, 49, 69, 96. Albert also decided that the freedom to think, to explore his own ideas would always be the most important thing in his life. If he got married and had children, his wife and family would matter to him. Of course, but they would never matter as much. He realized as his ability to think freely. To some people, that might sound like a selfish way to live. But for Albert, it was the only kind of life that made any sense. Albert re-entered high school in Switzerland, where German was spoken. What a pleasant and unexpected surprise! His new school wasn't like the German high school at all. As a Swiss school, students were supposed to ask questions. Albert especially enjoyed discussing The subject of talk with his teachers. How fast the time passes. What is the future? Do we travel into it or it is already here? Will time ever run out? Not only did Albert like his Swiss school. He also liked the Swiss people. They were friendly and fair. Albert decided to become a citizen of Switzerland. After graduating from high school, Albert went in Switzerland and began college at Swiss Federal Polytechnic in the city of Zurich. Albert had no money. His family had fallen on hard times. An uncle provided Albert with a little money, but it wasn't much. Albert lived in a dark room, as barely enough, and went without new clothes, just so he stayed in school. Still, there were good things about this time. At college, he was making new friends. The students long they would call Albert the professor because he had so many theories and talked so much about physics. One of his new friends was Maliva Malik, the only woman in Albert's class. Albert started to call her Dolly. She, too, was a brilliant singer that taught endlessly about spiritual music. It's not enough before Mavla and Albert announced they planned to marry. Without a thought of you, he wrote her in 19 at the age of 21. I would no longer want to live among this sorry herd of humans. Upon graduation from college in 19, Albert was all set to become a physics teacher. It should have been a wonderful time in his life. He had his diploma and he was in love. However, he could not find a teaching job. His uncle stopped sending him money. All his clothes were ragged. His meals were few and far between. His health suffered. Without a job, he couldn't afford to marry Mevla. Albert ended up taking a job with the Swiss Patent Office. It wasn't where he wanted to work, but it was a job. So Albert's father died. Albert was devastated. Fortunately, he had a Minerva, and surprisingly, his job as a patient officer turned out to be far better than Albert could have ever imagined. Chapter 4: The Best Years. When a person invents something, for example, a battery-powered back scratcher for miniature poodles, the inventor sends a description of the invention to a patient's office. An examiner looks at the idea and decides it is really something new, or just something that is a little bit different from an already invented gadget. If it's really a new idea, the inventor gets a patent, which means other people aren't allowed to copy it. It takes a very smart person to understand inventions, and they are just at the idea stage. Albert was that person. Reading applications for new inventions was like solving puzzles. Albert was so good at his job that each day he completed his work long before it was time to go home. He then was able to turn his attention to his first love thinking. Imagine what this must have been like for Albert. It would be like a kid going to school every morning, finishing all the schoolwork within an hour and then playing for the rest of the day. With all the time to think, Albert ended up writing and publishing more scientific papers. In 1 year alone, he published 5 groundbreaking papers in a very famous German journal about physics. And a storm broke loose in my mind, explained Albert. So in some ways, his patient office job turned out to be a lot better than a teaching job that he had originally hoped for. It's thin and 40. People measure objects in 3 ways: length, width, and depth. Anything a piece of toast, a TV, or a yo-yo is so many inches high, so many inches wide, and so many inches thick. These 3 ways of measuring are known as dimensions, all through in the 4-dimensional time. Albert said that the dimension of time was as important as length, width, and depth, especially when measuring something really big like outer space. You think about the size of outer space, but not the time it takes for something to travel through the space. It's like thinking about the song without the lyrics. Something important is missing. Steady work at the patient's office. Albert said that he could ask Meleva to marry him. So he did. She said yes, and they were married in 1903. The following year, their son, Hans Albert, was born. Albert had a time to enjoy music, long dinners, and long walks with his family. Albert was happy and secure, confident in his job. He could relax, be more himself. For Albert, that means resting carelessly, wearing the same wrinkled shirts day after day, and often forgetting to brush his hair. As someone once said, this didn't look as if he just smoked an exploding cigar. Albert's years at a patient's office were wonderful. He had a family, time to think, and write lots of scientific papers, enough money. Many of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century, electronics, the atomic bomb, space travel, were suggested by Einstein in the papers he published while he worked at the patient's office. Those ideas were then worked on further by other scientists in the decades that followed. Then in 1909, the University of Zurich convinced Albert to leave the patient office and become professor. Albert would actually be paid to teach the study physics. That was even more wonderful. Einstein's theory of relativity in 1905. I'm so tired, so goodbye. I'll see you later.